because that leaf is what is capturing like sunlight and creating energy that's stored in that corm. So once that corm gets big enough and has enough energy after years of putting on leaves, it then might have enough energy to invest in that flower cycle. And sometimes those time periods can look very different depending on the species. So this one that's pictured here, the Morphos titanum, this one only goes through that flower cycle about every 7 to 10 years. And that's because that flower that you see is about 7 to 10 feet tall. So it costs a lot of energy for the plant to make a flower that big. So it will usually go through its leafing cycle for about 7 to 10 years before it has enough energy. So the leafing cycle that you see right here is the same species that we see on the left-hand side. So this one's a Morphos titanum. And this leaf is only about 5 feet tall, but it can even in the wild range all the way up to about 20 feet tall. And when it's not in its leafing cycle, it then will eventually go back to a corm. So you can see 2 corms at the base there. These ones are only about 10 pounds. And this one will not have enough energy to put on a flower till it's about 60 to 65 pounds. So these guys are only about 6 years old. They still have a lot of growing up to do before they probably can put on flower. Versus the species on the right, this is it in its flowering cycle. That's a different species, so this flower is much smaller, but it has the same kind of anatomy structures as the one pictured there. So that middle structure is called the spadex. That's what has the female and male part of the flower. And then the petal structure on the outside is what we call a spathe. So this one blooms about every 3 to 5 years because it just needs a little less energy to create that flower. It's not quite as big as the one pictured there. And then once that flower gets pollinated, it will produce berries that have seeds. And then those seedlings can produce new little baby corms. And then when this flower dies, it most likely will just go back to being that corm in dormancy until it has enough energy to put on the leaf and go through that leafing cycle again. So this one goes through a flowering period about 3 to 5 years. We'll see a flower versus this one's about 7 to 10 years.
Wow.
So in general, Morphophalluses, they're pretty rare blooms. They're also short blooms. So this flower probably will only last like 3 to 5 days, and it's stinkiest when it first opens up. So that's why right now we don't really smell anything, because the female flowers have already opened with the stinky scent and closed. And that's why when you get up closer, you see the bright yellow, that's the pollen. So now it's in its pollen stage, where it's producing a lot of pollen, and it'll stagger the female flowers opening in the pollen stage, so that way it doesn't self-pollinate. It's kind of nice because we can actually look at it and observe it, versus it was so stinky in here about like 3 days ago that people didn't even want to be in here. It was like you opened the doors and you could smell it.
Really?
So very impressive stinky scents to attract its pollinators, but nice when it's not stinky because you can just
Take a look closer.
So, yeah.
And Danny here is going to go to lunch. But if you have any more questions, I am here.
Can I take a picture?
Yeah, absolutely.
A można încerc să vă zic în român o leacă.